Clinton wants to run for president, but she would not be human if this didn't enter in as a consideration. And my other point is, this will be an issue in the 2016 races, whether she likes it or not. Every presidential candidate is asked for all of their health records by the New York Times. They turn them over to and vice presidential candidates. They turn them over to a battery of doctors, and they examine them in detail. And my point was that everybody says she's going to run, and she probably is. But I would bet it's a more complicated calculation than we might think, because, look, she'll be 69.
All right, folks. That's, of course, Karl Rove. And the report today was that Karl Rove, at a private gathering, had said that Hillary Clinton had brain damage. He walked that back on Fox this morning, saying, no, no, no. I was saying, and he recounted her history, where she was diagnosed with a blood clot between the brain and the skull by the right ear, and then made the points you just heard him make. Joining us now to talk about that and oh so much more is the Malzberg Panel. Former Special Assistant to President George W. Bush, Ron Christie, is here. And, of course, you read him at the Daily Beast as well. And also on the Malzberg Panel, we are joined by the host of Steele and Ungar, co-host of Steele and Ungar, and that would be the one and only Rick Ungar. SiriusXM is where you could catch that show. Gentlemen, welcome. I appreciate both of you coming in.
Always good to be here.
All right, let's start. Ron, Karl Rove, certainly a lightning rod. He had to know that anything you said would be result in a thunderstorm or a hurricane or whatever. So was he smart in bringing this up now? Should he have waited till later? Or is this another opportunity for, as they did, Hillary's people to put out a statement and then be able to say down the road, we've been there and done that?
Well, I think it's a we've been there and done that moment. Karl Rove, I've known him for over a decade. He never says anything that he doesn't intend to put out there. So he clearly intentionally meant to say what he said about her health and putting her health records out. On the other hand, of course, this will give Team Hillary, if she does in fact decide to run, the opportunity to say she'll release her record, she's healthy, she's fine, shouldn't be an issue. So perhaps Karl maybe shouldn't have said this as early as he did.
Rick?
Well, look, I mean, it was a good pivot this morning. There's nothing wrong with suggesting that Hillary's going to have to put out her medical records. Of course she would. But that really wasn't what was causing the stir. What was causing the stir was the report that he had said that she was brain damaged and she had spent 30 days in the hospital. She spent 3. And that she left the hospital wearing sunglasses because that's a sign of a brain injury. Now, I've been trying to track down Dan Raviv all day, who was on the dais with Karl, to see whether he said it or not. If he didn't really say it, then no harm, no foul. I kind of think he did.
Interesting. Dan Raviv was on the show not too long ago. Maybe we'll get a hold of him. All right. Now, one of the things that we just talked about with John McLaughlin earlier was regarding Hillary. His polling indicates that Americans do want to know the truth about Benghazi, and that's what they say when asked. Whether or not you believe the truth has already been out there, as Hillary believes. He also said that, and I'm paraphrasing, Hillary better have some good answers for when and if she's questioned by the special panel, select committee in the Congress. So, Rick, do you agree with that?
I agree that Americans do want to know the truth. We've kind of talked about this before. I don't think we ever will know the truth, but not because of a White House cover-up, because it was clearly a CIA operation going on there. And like so many things the CIA does, we are not intended to know what happens. And I think this is no different, as frustrating as that may be.
So, Ron, does Hillary go before the committee and say, this was a national security event I can't talk about, and bye-bye?
I think she might. I actually think Rick's right here. I mean, some of the reporting I've heard, it seems that this may have been a consulate that was actually being used to either funnel guns and use that to help arm the rebels in Syria. I've heard all sorts of things, but I think this was probably a classified operation, and I think Americans want to have the former Secretary of State come before that committee and answer some very pointed questions. What was she doing that night? What was her communication with the president? Why, when the ambassador had repeatedly asked for additional security, were those requests denied? I mean, I think there's certainly enough truth that we still haven't heard yet that can come out, whether or not we ever find out what that true mission was for that consulate.
See, I think we have heard the answers to some of those things that may not be satisfactory to everybody. I get that. But more importantly, Ron and I agreed. So good night, folks. Tip your waitress. Drive home safely.
The end. All right, let's move on. Something else I discussed earlier with John McLaughlin. He's of the opinion that Republicans between now and the November elections, it's not good enough to ride in the car and continue this journey with Benghazi being thrown in as a stop and just ride the healthcare negativity. They have to come up with a plan. Now, they can't pass something. They can pass something in the House. It'll never pass the Senate. They have passed things in the House. But they have to come up with a cohesive, this is our alternative. Yet most polls show Republicans poised for great victory. So, Ron, do they take that chance to have that plan torn apart fairly or unfairly by the Democrats and the media, or just ride along?
No, I think we need to talk about what we're for as opposed to what we're against. I mean, we can't just say we're for Benghazi and we're for repealing Obamacare. I think in order to remove the folks who are in office now and say that you should fire the incumbent and you should hire me, we need to have a clear vision. We need to have an articulate plan as to exactly why putting Republicans in control of the House and the Senate is the smart thing to do. And I think if they continue with this Benghazi, 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 and oh yeah, Obamacare repeal, I think that's to our peril and not to our advantage.
Rick?
See, now you're pushing it. Ron and I agree twice, and that's no fun at all, not for anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, as we sit here right now, it's hard to envision the Republicans not only continuing to hold the House of Representatives in November, but it's hard to envision them not taking the Senate. However, there's a long time to go between now and the election, and exactly what Ron just said is what might be what it takes for them to screw it up. They screwed it up last time with some candidates who were not particularly artful in the things that they said. It cost them control of the Senate. They may do it again, but through a different means. They have got to be for something. They have got to suggest real solutions. You can't bash Obamacare by saying how terrible it is, on and on and on, especially when we're seeing signs now that it's doing a whole lot better than anybody anticipated.
Well, only 12% in the CNN poll said they like it the way it is.
That may be the polls, but that's not the reality of the law itself.
Well,
we have to learn to separate
the
that.
reality of the law itself is that 6 million people were kicked off their plan, and
No,
we
they
don't.
weren't.
And we
They're
don't know.
behind the times.
and
That's been proven completely false.
Really?
Now.
So cancellation
Really?
notices didn't exist?
No, as a matter of fact, we already know that the percentage of people outside of the normal cancellation before any of us heard of Obamacare is less than 10%.
Ron, quick,
Read
quick,
all about
15
it on
seconds,
my
15
in my
seconds,
column
Ron.
on it.
All we know is that millions of people have been displaced by Obamacare, and the White House is trumpeting these new numbers of people who've signed up. But you know what? It's the law, so it's not as if they actually like it.
You know what
All
else
right,
we know?
go ahead, quick.
What we also know today, due to a report from Goldman Sachs.
We'll have to come back with it.
Oh,
Panel
you gotta hear
continues.
this.
Steve
You gotta
Malzberg
hear
Show. Don't
this.
go away.